Are you a writer whose mind is a whirlwind of creativity and distraction? Hello, and welcome to Writing While Distracted, the writing podcast that helps you transform your scattered thoughts into literary brilliance. I'm your host, Brenda Murphy, and your NeuroSpicy writing coach. For writers of all kinds, but particularly those dealing with distraction and mental health issues, on this podcast you'll hear positive advice, interviews from best-selling authors sharing their secrets for staying focused amidst the chaos of their minds, along with writing tips to help you find your story's beginning and use your strengths to get to the end of your novel. Because here, creativity thrives in the midst of chaos. Join me today as we talk about how to evaluate a fiction premise. This is the first podcast in my Steps to Writing a Novel series. You can find a link for the first podcast in this series in the show notes. For most writers, coming up with an idea is the easy part. In love with their premise, convinced it is a brilliant concept, they are compelled to start writing. This is particularly true for neurodivergent people. We are impulsive. We do the things. We jump in with both feet, and then we realize we're over our heads. We don't know where to go. Often, we'll fly along, the words are flowing, and then you hit a bump. Maybe at the 20,000 word mark in your manuscript or the 30,000 word mark. Most often, it's just about in the middle of your work. Now, at this point, many folks abandon their project and move on to the next shiny idea. This leads to piles of unfinished projects and sadness. Unfinished manuscripts are most often unfinished because time was not spent on the front end of a project to examine the novel's idea. A strong premise and supporting ideas are necessary to carry the length of a work. It is the number one question to answer before you start writing, particularly in genre fiction, because you're working within an expected framework. For example, in romance, there's a happy ever after or a happy for now. In mystery novels, you solve the crime. In a thriller, you stop the bad thing from happening. So the way you arrive at the expected outcome is the most important part of your novel. Genre readers know how the book ends. It is how creatively a writer arrives at the ending that draws readers to your work. A premise that might work wonderfully for a short story will fall short of holding a reader's attention in a novel-length work unless it is expanded and your main characters' lives are complicated by events that block their path forward. If this sounds like I'm talking about plotting, I am. Although I am a discovery draft writer, I always take the time to examine my idea and then work out a loose plotline based on the initial premise. For example, the idea for my novel Music from Stone came to me one night while we were sheltering in our basement due to a tornado warning. What if my main characters met because they ended up in a basement together during a storm? From there, I used the what if and then method to ask myself questions until I believed that the idea would support a book-length manuscript. So the first step in evaluating any idea is to know what length story you want to write. If you're writing genre fiction, you have to know the expected lengths for your genre. In the show notes, I've provided a list of lengths by genre. The caveat here is this is a guide, but if you're planning to submit to an agent, an acquiring editor, or a publisher, sticking to the expected length can go a long way toward getting your work read by agents and publishers. If a publisher takes direct submissions, there will be a page with submission requirements, including expected word counts. Stay within the word counts. It really increases your chances of acceptance. If you are indie publishing, you can do whatever you want with word counts, but you might want to stick within reader expectations for length. Step 2 is to use one of the following two ways, or sometimes both of them, to explore your idea. I use both of them frequently. Each has its benefits depending on how your mind makes connections and where you are in the story process. I recommend you try each of them to see which one fits you best, and feel free to use both at the same time because they both offer a unique way to examine your thoughts and to make a plan around your story. The first way that I usually start examining an idea is to use mind mapping. Now, mind mapping is a nonlinear way to capture ideas and is absolutely perfect for neurodivergent folks. I use it often as it helps capture all the tangents that bubble up as you consider a story. Because of its loose structure, mind mapping lets you explore every idea you can come up with regarding your story's premise. The tangents and wild offshoots of plot are creative gold. To assess your premise using a mind map, start with a blank piece of paper. You can do this on a computer, but I find that sitting at a keyboard slows me down and makes it feel too official, stifling some of my creative thoughts. Mind mapping is a unique creative exercise in that you can just let yourself go and come up with all the wild ideas that you want to without judgment. I also use a mind mapping application if I'm someplace or in a unique situation where I cannot use paper and pencil. My mind mapping application will also work with speech to text, and a lot of them are now capable of doing that. So if you're someone who can't use a piece of paper, you can't use the analog methods for whatever reason, you can do this through a dictation app and the mind mapping app. I can't type as fast as I can think, so it slows me down and I lose my line of thought, which is why I tend to do it by hand. To construct a mind map, write your premise, your idea, in the center of a large sheet of paper. Keep it bare bones, 1 to 2 sentences. When I say large, I mean I use a poster-sized piece of paper. You can use whatever size paper fits for you. I have very large and messy handwriting. If you write small, you could probably use a smaller size piece of paper. I like to give myself room to explore all the what-ifs of my story. I use the large paper because I find using a larger paper frees me from rejecting ideas simply because I ran out of room to write them down. If you know the ending of your story, write it up in a far corner of the page to keep it top of mind. Once you have your page set up, ask yourself the following questions. Write the answers to them around the main premise, in any order. What do my characters do for work? Do they love their work? Do they hate it? How old are they? What do my characters want? Why can't they have it? Who are their friends and helpers? Who are their adversaries? Who are their enemies? How do my main characters meet? What will they do to get what they want? Where are they? What is the time period and setting for my story? What do they hate? What do they love? Why do they want what they want? What successes have they had? What failures haunt them? How do they deal with failure? How do they deal with success? What is the lie they tell themselves? What is the lie they tell other people? And any other questions you feel are necessary for your project as related to your characters and story. For example, for my fantasy and paranormal stories, I always include questions about magic and its costs, questions about power dynamics, and the political systems of my imaginary world. Once you have the answers to the questions completed, you draw lines to connect the ones you want to keep to your story idea. And from those connection lines, you write a list of scenes that would show those answers. For example, your character has failed many times at starting a business. She still believes she can succeed with the right idea. You would list a scene using 1 or 2 sentences showing her in conflict with her family members when she asked to borrow money for a new venture. The scene provides an opportunity to show her optimism and her conflicted relationship with her family in the same scene. From that scene, you can work out other scenes to show the rest of the story. Draw lines to connect characters and their scenes. Have fun, use different color markers, and just play with it. This is the time to let the wildness of your mind have free rein. If you're not able to do this on paper, as I said before, I've added a link to a mind mapping app that I use that I know will work with the Mac dictation system, and I assume will work with the Windows if you're using a PC with that dictation system, so that you can take advantage of the freedom of the keyboard and any limitations from your typing speed. Novels are created by scenes. By planning them that way, as a discovery writer, you don't always have to know all the details of a scene, but you'll know the point of the scene when you sit down to write it. If you're just starting out as a writer, use 1,000 words as your scene length when you're planning how many scenes for your book. For a 70,000-word novel, I know I need about 75 scenes. Your mileage will vary as everyone has different average scene lengths. And the more you write, and after you've been writing for a while, you'll know what your average scene length is. And then you can plug those numbers in for how many scenes you'll need to finish your project. The pro tip here is it's okay to have more scenes listed than you'll need to tell your story. You can pare down the number of scenes once you sort them into a narrative. Learning to mind map has saved me more than once from starting a novel without enough ideas to keep the story from bogging down in the middle. The bonus for NeuroSpicy writers of having a scene list and knowing how many scenes you will need to tell your story is the ability to break down your task into small chunks so you don't overwhelm yourself. 80,000 words sounds like an impossible number to reach, particularly if the most you've ever written is a 2,000-word short story. By breaking the story down into 1,000-word blocks, it's less overwhelming. You will still need to do the work, but you can focus on today's task instead of looking ahead and freaking yourself out. And that is so easy to do. You overwhelm yourself and think, I will never be able to write that many words. But if you break it down into what is doable for you, now I say 1,000. I can write 1,000 words a day. And I know this about myself because I've been writing for a long time. Start with a lower number. You can start with 250 words a day. You can start with 50 words a day. You can start with 100 words a day. It doesn't matter. Just start with a number of words so that you can see them add up to your final project. The second means of evaluating a fiction premise that I use is playing the what if and then game. And this method can be done by hand or on the computer. It doesn't matter. At the top of your page, your document, you're going to write out your premise and the same thing as before. Keep it short, 1 to 2 sentences, and then ask yourself, and then, and write out your answer. And if you get stuck, switch to what if. And you keep writing using a stream of consciousness type flow. You don't worry about spelling. You don't worry about punctuation. You don't worry about full sentences. You write it just as it comes to you. Just keep moving. Stop when you have exhausted all of the what ifs and thens you can think of. This exercise works really well to revive unfinished projects too. If you've got a pile of manuscripts laying around on your hard drive and you stopped because you didn't know where to go with your story, you got stuck, pull it out, read what you've written, write the last thing that happened, and then start playing what if then. And you'll be surprised what will come out of that stream of consciousness will give you a way forward in that stalled project. You can be as dramatic, as silly, as wild, and over the top as you want to be when you're writing this out. Once you're finished, put it aside for a day or two, and when you look at it again, make a scene list or outline from your idea. I'm going to give you a short example. The idea. A high-powered lawyer returns to a small town to settle her father's estate and meets the woman of her dreams. What if they meet because the woman is fostering her father's dog? And then they have a one-night stand. What if the lawyer had a bad relationship with her dad? What if his business accounts reveal missing money? What if she goes looking for his account ledgers? And then she finds his diaries instead and reads them. What if they reveal he was having an affair with a married woman? And then someone tries to kill her by burning down her father's house? What if the woman she had a one-night stand with offers to let her stay for free at her house? What if she falls in love and then loses her job? What if another attempt is made on her life and the woman saves her? And so on. You can use this method as often as you need to move your story forward. There are other ways to evaluate story ideas, but these two methods work best for people who are non-linear thinkers. Both methods support and harness the creative power of individuals whose thoughts spiral out from ideas and are tangential thinkers. As helpful as it is to discuss your ideas with trusted writer friends, having a record of your plot ideas and scenes and a list is essential. It's not a question of whether or not you're going to get stuck at some point in your manuscript. It happens to everyone. What is important is what you do to get unstuck. When you take the time to evaluate your story idea before you begin, you can save time and avoid frustration. Evaluating the idea or premise for your story is a key element for writing success and manuscript completion. And it's the first step in my list of 11 steps to writing a novel. Use these methods to keep your writing flowing until you reach those magic words, the end. I hope you'll try some of these methods, check out the links I've left in the show notes, and test your premise before you start your novel. Until next time, keep writing. Thanks for tuning in to Writing While Distracted, where we navigate the winding roads of creativity amidst the chaos of distraction. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, found it useful, please share it and tag me. DM me and let me know what helped you specifically. Please leave a review. It really helps get the podcast in front of more folks. And remember, in the dance between focus and diversion, every stumble is a step closer to mastering the art of writing. Join us next time as we continue to unravel the mysteries of the writer's mind. Until then, keep writing, keep wandering, and embrace the distractions that fuel your creativity. Stay tuned, stay inspired.